Hello, it's Yvonne from the Fabric Hut. Hey, welcome to my sewing room today. We have a cool project today. I am loving this one. We are going to take 4 pieces out of the Urban Liberty, easy for me to say, the Urban Liberty collection. 4 of the layer cake pieces, and we are going to turn them into this very cool little basket that I keep my little clips in it, but let me dump them out so you can see the basket. It's a real nice little basket that I like by my sewing machine. I used to keep a little glass bowl there that I kept my clips in. It was one that I think it was my grandmother's or something. But I kept knocking it off and I was worried I was going to break it. So I made this little bowl and it just sits next to my machine and I can keep bobbins in them. I make them in all sorts of different sizes. So that's the small one. This one I've made a little bit bigger. So, you can do whatever you like. The reason we're making a small one today is because the outside or inside, they are reversible. So whichever one you want, this fabric needs to be 10 inches in order for it to work. This one needs a 12-inch square, and the layer cakes are only 10 inches, so I made a little bit smaller one. I love them. It's going to be so much fun. So grab 4 of your squares and a batting square, a 10-inch batting square, and join me at my sewing machine. So here we are with our 4 squares. We have to decide which square we want to be the solid piece. It is not a solid fabric, it's a solid piece. These are going to be pieced. This is going to be solid. I'm going to just use one of these floral pieces as that, and the other one that matches it, I'm going to use right here as my hexagon. So we're going to start by cutting this hexagon. It needs to be a 4.5-inch hexie. So how are we going to do that? If you are lucky, you have a die cutting machine that can cut them for you, but most of us don't. So I'm going to show you how to cut a hexie 4.5 inches. So whatever size hexie you need, you start with a square that big. So I'm going to just fold this over and cut myself a 4.5-inch square. And I'm just going to cut the whole length because I'm going to need some strips out of it too. Okay, so here's 4.5. And we will just cut that up. I got my magnet stuck on my cutter. Okay. And then we'll unfold this. And we will cut this one at 4.5. Now this is just a really easy way just to start with a hexagon. They seem really intimidating, but they're not when you know the trick. Okay, so I have my 4.5-inch square, right? I'm going to fold it in half, just like that. Okay, and I'm going to put it where the fold is on a line. I want the fold away from me, and I'm going to line it up on a line, okay? But that doesn't matter. You just need your fold because the line you're going to line it up with is on your ruler here. When you're looking at your rulers, they have these diagonal lines, right? I want the 60-degree line right there, the 60-degree line. And I'm going to lay that 60-degree line across the fold of my hexagon. Actually, you know what? I'm doing that backwards. I don't want the fold. I want the raw edges. Oh, that would have been bad. Okay, raw edges on the 60-degree angle. And you're going to line it up across the top at the 60 and bring it over till this point is on the edge of the ruler. Okay, so straight at the 60 line there and cut that off. Okay, now we have, looks like that. Isn't that cool? Okay, See, now had I have cut it with the fold up here, that wouldn't have worked. So raw edges on top. Then I'm going to just turn it over and do the same thing on this side. I'm going to line up my 60 degree with that top edge. I'll light it up here on the end. Now you also can use the 60 degree that is this way and double check, because it's going to be 60 degrees there, and just double check that it's all even. Get it right on that corner. Okay, now, still not quite right, is it? It's a little bit off. So now this is the final step. We're going to take this piece and we're going to take opposite. So this is the way we had it folded before, with the fold here. We are going to take this side to this side and put them together. Okay, so it's not folding the same direction it was before. And you see how it's hanging off a little bit there? We're going to just take that off. Snip that away. Turn it over. You've got the same thing on this side. It's about 1/4 of an inch. Make sure I still have it lined up nicely. There you go. Slide it off. And now check this out. There's our hexie. Exactly the size we need. When you're measuring a hexie, you're measuring it from point to point, not this side. It's from across it. And you want it to be 4.5 inches. And look at there. That's what we've got. 4.5 inches. Okay? So we've made our hexie. We've made our center hexie. We are good to go now for the rest of our project. Now, your next thing you're going to have to decide eventually is what you want here. So because I'm using 3 fabrics, I thought it would be fun to have this on the bottom, have this one right here, come back to this one for in the middle, and then go for the blue on top. Doesn't that sound like fun? So that's what we're going to do. Each of these strips needs to be 1 1/4 inch wide. So we're going to just take our scraps of this blue and cut it into strips 1 1/4 inch wide. And you're going to need a couple of them. Let's see. We're going to start right there. And I am going to cut 3 strips. Because it's hexagon, that means there are 6 sides, and I think I can get 2 sides out of each strip. So we're going to cut 3 1 1/4 inch strips of the focus fabric. Set this one aside in case we need more. Okay, we are going to also need 6 strips of our first fabric. So fold it in half and cut. On this one, I don't think we're going to need quite as much. So what we're going to need is one that goes across this side, which is about 2 1/4. So I'm going to need 6 of them that are 3 inches long. Okay, so I can get 3 out of each strip. So I really only need 2 strips out of this color. Okay, did that make sense? Because we need 3 inches. So I'm going to take this one and we're going to need 2 of them that are 3 inches, 2 of them that are 4 inches, and 2 of them that are 5 inches. So let's see. Actually, I'm going to need one more, aren't I? I'm going to need 3. Let's cut one more. Okay. So this one is a 10-inch strip. So if I cut it in half, that's going to be my 2 5 inches. Perfect, got those. This one is a 10-inch strip. So if I cut off 3 inches on one end, right there, and then 4 inches here. Now we're good. Now we have 6 of this color. Okay. And then we're also going to need 6 of this color. Now, these are going to be a little bit longer strips, so we're not going to cut them down until we get there. But we will build as we go. 1, 2, and 3. So I think the easiest way to remember this for me is the first row we're going to start with 2 3s, 2 4s, 2 5s. The next row we're going to start with 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 6. And the last row will be 2 5s, 2 6, 2 7s. In theory. So let's see what happens as we go along. Like I say, I made a smaller one, so my numbers may be just a little bit off, but we're going to make it work. Okay, clean off my deck here so I can start doing. And let's bring up to the sewing table, and here we go. We're going to take our little pink ones first, our 3-inch ones. Well, that was my extra. My 3s, my 4s, and my 5s. I'm going to take my 2 3-inch ones and put them opposite of each other. I need it to be past this little point. You're going to be doing a lot of trimming on this, but you want your strip longer than this side by just a smidge. Okay, so it's right there. And I'm just going to sew right up that one. Now, if you were making these for gifts, you could do them in a chain here, and you could do all of this piece on all of them. Since we're only making one, I'm going to be cutting it as we go. Okay, so there's that one. Then we're going to go straight across and put the other 3 straight across from that one. Okay, just like that. At this point, you can finger press, or you can go to your iron and give it a good press. You're going to press it towards your strip, towards this outside strip. I'm just doing fingernail press and fingernail press right there. Okay. I kept my cutting mat up here on my sewing table because now we are going to line up with this line and just trim off this little triangle right there. See that? We're going to do it on all 4 sides. So it does take some time for trimming. You're going to do a lot of trimming, like I said. But that's okay because they're so cute and they're so worth it. 3 and 4. Okay. Now, if we were to measure now, this side, that is about a 3.5. So we probably don't need a full 4, but we have a 4-inch one that we'll use for that. Okay. We just want it to be a little bit longer than that seam. If you are very confident, you can cut it exactly that length, but either way you're going to have to trim. So I like to go on a little bit larger just so I have wiggle room. And I'm going to sew that one. And then again, opposite sides, right here, opposite side. We'll do the other one. Now, do you have to make all of these the same color in this row around? Absolutely not. You can use scrap. You can do whatever. I have made them just completely scrappy. This larger one that I did, I used 1.5-inch strips. And so I just went to my 1.5-inch strip box and pulled out all the ones I liked and sat and just quilted away, making whatever color I wanted next. It was just very freeing. No thought process to it. I'm sorry. And you just keep going. Now you can also, when you have just this little line here to line up to, you can use this line. It's going to be 1 inch. See how that's just 1 inch? And you can just trim off, because that's a little bit longer line to deal with. Just keeps you nice and straight. This one doesn't have one to sew on, or one sewn on yet. So, okay, and here's the 1 inch. Now, how long do we need for this one? We actually could get away with a 4-inch there. So we could have gone a 4 instead of a 5, but like I said, I like a little bit extra. Now, this is another purpose I use for these baskets. There, I just put my trimmings in that one. So it can be a thread basket. You can take it when you're doing handwork and keep all of your handwork supplies in it and put threads and bobbins, whatever you like. There's all sorts of things that these little baskets are good for. I've made them much larger and I've used them as bread baskets. It's really a fun way to gift a piece of, or a loaf of sourdough bread, to make a big old hexy basket, just the same size as your bread, and pop it in there, and it's just a very pretty little gift. Okay. And there is number 6, the final one. Now I'm getting a little bit bigger here. See how it's getting a little bit bigger? So after I trim it, or even before you trim it, I'm going to take the time to give it a quick press. I know you can't see my pressing mat, but there we go. A quick press. Now I'll trim it up. And we're just going to continue this process for 2 more rows. So on this one, I'm going to measure this here in just a second and see how big we need to cut our next strips. Okay, so this little one right here is right at 3 inches. So you could start with a 3. I'll probably do a 3.5. And then the next one would be 4.5 and 5.5, or something close to that. Okay, so our next one, though, is going to be this color. So I'm going to cut my 3.5. Now remember I said 3.5 and 5.5. So I'm going to cut them from the same strip, because that way I know I can get them both out of these strips. So there's my 3.5, and then there's my 5.5. And just a little bit left over. Doesn't matter. Okay, and I dropped my other one. Let me pick it up here. Okay, and then this one needs to be about 4.5. Since we know it's a 5-inch strip, I'll just cut it in half. Yeah. Okay, and we'll just go through the same steps. I actually like to start on the same side I started before. You notice how this one kind of gets lost a little bit? I kind of like to keep that all in a row, but it really doesn't matter. You can start anywhere. But I tend to start in the same place each time. And just like that. So sew opposite sides, stop, trim, sew opposite sides, stop, trim, and finish up this row, and then we will remeasure for our last row what size strips we need. I went ahead and finished off that row, and then I did the very same thing on this final row. So the measurements on this final row, it's real interesting. With these 1 1/4 inch strips, you are actually just increasing a 1/2 inch on each round. So we had on the first round, we had 3 1/2, 4, no, 3, 4, and 5. Then we had 3 1/2, 4 1/2, 5 1/2. Now we have 4, 5, and 6. So it works out really well. And we have our hexagon all ready to go. So the next thing we need to do is layer it and do some quilting. Okay, so we have our batting. We have our backing, both 10-inch squares. I'm going to just layer them together like that. I'm not going to worry about fusing them or anything because they're just a small piece. And then I'm going to layer my hexagon that I just made on top, right sides together. Okay? And because I'm going to be careful, I'm going to run a couple of pins, not on the edge because I don't want to have to deal with them as I'm sewing. I'm going to just put them, like that. Just 3 of them. It's going to keep it nice and neat. So what I'm going to look for is this piece right here that doesn't have any seams in it. This is just that last piece we put on. Okay, that's the one I want. And what I'm going to do on that piece is I am going to mark a spot to turn it right there. I don't want to sew that part. I want to start here, go all the way around, and come back to here. Now, you know what I just realized I can do is I'm going to take these pins out, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this all the way over, even with one edge, because that means when I cut this, I'm going to still have this strip here that I can do another one with. I can add it to some other fabrics. It's a big enough piece to save and use. So try and use your fabric as wisely as you can. And then I can still cut a little square or something out of those later if I want to. Okay, so here's my spot that I'm going to leave open to turn through. What I'm going to do, and we've talked about this before on pillowcase binding, but when I turn this, because there's batting here, it's going to make these two hard to keep together when you want to close up this opening. So before I even start sewing it together, I'm going to just fold this back about 1/4 inch, because that's about where my fold is going to be when I turn it, right? I'm going to just come through here and just sew, not on the top, but just sew the batting and the backing together 1/8 inch from the edge of this fabric, just so they are secured and now working as one piece. And it's going to make that turning so much easier. Okay. So see how that is? It's right there. Now I'm going to change out my foot here because I don't need that one. Again, I'm sewing on top of the fabric, so I don't want the edge foot that will pull on that fabric. I want just a flat foot. Okay, now I'm going to start here and sew all the way around, but I'm not going to start here. Again, I want this turn to be the easiest thing possible because I'm a lazy quilter. I want things easy. So I'm going to actually start coming at it perpendicular, and I'm going to sew about 4 stitches. Depending on how big your stitches are, I'm going to sew 1/4 inch in, and then I'm going to back stitch and come back. Okay? So right there, about 1, 2, 3, about 4 stitches. back stitch those same stitches and then come forward. And at that point, I can turn it and start my 1/4 of an inch all the way around. And you stop a 1/4 of an inch from the corner and just pivot. I have this automatic lift on my presser foot. You may not. You may have to come back and release your presser foot a little bit to get it to turn nicely. If this were a bigger project, if I were making one of the bigger baskets, not just this little one, I would put on my walking foot, but because I'm just doing a very little one, it's not going to be a big problem. There's not going to be enough movement on my quilt to make a difference. Okay, I'm almost around. Well, I'm a little over halfway around. I guess it felt like almost, but we're going to go all the way to that line that I drew as my stopping line. I'm making sure that my seams are going under the presser foot the proper direction, because that will make a difference a little later on. Okay, now here's my line. So I'm going to come up to the line, and once I get to the line, I'm going to pivot, so off the edge and back stitch. Okay, so now I have that edge secured not only here, but I have it secured here. And wait until we turn that. It's going to be so sweet. So easy to get it to turn. So you're going to now go back with your rotary cutter, or even, I mean, you can use a pair of scissors if you want, and just trim it down right to the edge of your hexagon. Get rid of all this extra stuff. It's not big. It's not going to be a big deal if you want to use scissors right here. Whatever works for you. I have my scissors handy, so I'm just going to do that. This doesn't have to be a really, really accurate straight seam. It can be a little wiggly, so scissors are fine because it's going to all be on the inside. Okay, set that stuff aside, and you're going to take out your pins because it's really hard to turn it with those pins in there. Okay, where's my opening? Nope, nope, nope. Where did it go? Oh, here it is, right here. Okay, I have these 6 corners that have a lot of bulk in them. So before we turn it, we want to just snip off a straight angle. You don't want to get on your row of stitches, a couple of stitches to the outside of your corner, because you don't want to lose the integrity of that corner. And just snip those babies off of there. Okay, got them all. Get my mess cleaned up. Okay, find my hole again. All right, now it's time to turn. Now I left kind of a small hole. Maybe should have left it a little bit bigger, but this is going to work. I'm going to put my thumb inside, and I'm going to use my fingertip to just poke that corner in. And I'm going to poke all 6 corners in before I even start turning it right side out. That just makes it so much easier to get a good sharp point on those corners. Okay, one more right down there. Okay, and then I'm going to reach my thumb into the farthest side and pull it out and just burst out that whole thing. Oh, that little hole was plenty big. Okay, and I'm just going to pop out. See how the corners are already popping out nice because I had pre-poked them? Okay, look at there. Look at there. We've got that. Now, I want to show you. Okay, see right here? This is where we hooked our batting and backing together. And look how it just folds in nice. It stays together, just folds in really, really smoothly. Now we had these little lines going this way. Watch what happens. You just put your fingers in there and it just automatically folds everything to exactly the right width. And look how straight that is. You can barely even see that that's where my opening is. Sometimes it'll be better than others, of course. But that just turned so nicely. So now we're going to take and give this a really good press. Get my board up here. Really good press. And set those seams nice and tight. Like that. And this is our opening one. Look at they just lay together so nicely. Okay. I'm even going to turn it over and give it a little press from the back, just so I'm sure everything is nice and crisp and secure, because now we need to do a little bit of quilting before we turn it into a bowl. Okay, so I like to start with the side that it has my opening. And I'm going to change feet again just so you can see what I'm doing really carefully. You know, a lot of times we use a 1/4 inch seam to go around. Well, this fold in here is a 1/4 of an inch. So if we use that seam, we're not going to get that secured. So instead of a 1/4 of an inch, in this particular technique, I'm going to use less than a 1/4. I'm going to use like an 1/8. And I know that this open toe foot, if I run my fabric right up against the edge of that foot, it is going to be like a 1/16 of an inch from the edge of my fabric, and it is going to secure that opening. Now, I don't want it to look like that's the only side I did that to, so I'm going to actually just do the whole thing with that really narrow little seam all the way around. Now, because there's only one layer of batting, these corners are not hard to get over. They just go really smoothly. Look how fast that is. Okay? And I'm going to go all the way back around to the corner that I started on. Now, while you're doing this, you can start thinking about which way you want your bowl to look. Whether you want your stripes to be on the outside of your bowl, or if you want them to be on the inside of your bowl. I have done it both ways. It depends on what I'm using for my backing fabric. And there we go. So let me show you my two bowls, one that is each way, and that way you will have a visual and you can think about which one you want. Let me get my little threads cut off here. There we go. Okay. Nope, I missed one. I'll get it in a second. Okay, so this bowl, I put the backing fabric on the inside. On this bowl, I put the stripes on the inside and the backing fabric on the outside. So they're both adorable. You just have to think which one you want to do. I think for this one, what do I want to do? I think I'm going to put this on the inside like this one. I have one with it on the outside. I'm going to make the other one with it on the inside, just to be different. Okay, so let me finish getting those off. All right, so now how do we make that bowl? How do we get it to stand up like this? So simple. We are going to take, and whatever side you want to be on the outside, this is going to be my outside. We're going to turn it to that side, and we are going to go to each one of these corners, and we are going to mark 1/2 inch from the corner right there. Okay, corner and half. There's the corner and a half. And you can mark it on both sides or just on one. I'm just marking it on one. But that one's going to be hard to see. If you can't see it, use a pin to mark your corner, your 1/2 inch line. Some of these I might have to use pins because this is a very busy fabric. And this is a heat erase pen, so I'm not worried about it showing later on because I can make it go away. If you're having a hard time finding the corner, use your ruler all the way across it and then go over. My pen is starting to die. That's why I'm having to take so many swipes at it to get it dark enough that we can see. There we go. And I'm not worried about the angle of this line. I just want that marked. Okay? Okay, so this is the outside. Now, you can choose how high your sides are up. I want my sides to start at this point here. So that is another point that I need to have referenced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pin, pop it right through that point. If this is on the outside, it's easier because you can just fold it and you know that point's right there. But because I'm doing it the opposite way, I'm going to take this pin, I'm going to run it up from that point, and I can see it right there, and I'm going to draw a line from my initial mark all the way to that point. And typically, even if you're using a pin, you can see this line because the variance in the fabric. This one I couldn't see that because I had dark right there. Okay, and then once you get that line drawn, you can take that pin out, move it to the next one, hook it straight through that corner, and lay it down. Okay, here's my my half inch, and I'm going to just draw a line all the way up that. Okay, see how that goes? And just do that all the way around. So you'll have 6 little lines, 6 little pinholes and lines. And you're almost done already. And so this is the kind of thing, I have made these for Christmas gifts before, like I say, and put a loaf of bread in them or something. This is one of those things that you can do in bulk by getting it all to this stage, and then one evening while you're watching TV, you just sit with this on your lap and draw all your lines, and then the next day you can sew them. So it's not so tedious to do it all at one time, and it works real well. I think I made 14 of these last year at Christmas time, and that's what I would do. I would do, one step at the machine, then I'd go over to my pressing board and do the next step. And I like to find things that I can do in the evenings when I'm ready to relax, but I'm not ready to be done being creative. I can then continue this while I'm sitting in my chair relaxing. Okay, so now, can you see those lines? They're kind of faint on this. I've got both pins out of my way, and I'm ready to turn this into a basket. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to take from this point right there and fold it, making sure you don't have any puckers in here. It's one of those things you just play with, get your thumbnail in there and push it out. Get that point and fold it all the way up to this point, making sure that everything is smooth on the inside. And when this is even, you know you're at the point. Then you're going to start right there at that beginning point. And okay, now I'm not quite on. I missed the fabric, so I need to move it over a little bit so it catches. There it goes. Do a little back stitch right there, and sew right up that line all the way to the edge and back stitch. Okay, and look at there. You have your first seam. Now, because I didn't catch it right away, it didn't go quite all the way down, so I'll turn it around and I'll go just a little bit farther down on this so that I'm getting all the way to that center seam. Little back stitch. There we go. Did I get it that time? Look at there. I did. Okay, and then just go on to the next one. Fold it over. If you have your line drawn on this side, you can start at the top and come in, whichever way works easier for you. There's my line right there. Go in by hand the first stitch to make sure you're lined up well. A little bit of back stitch and keep going. A little bit of back stitch. Now, depending on how big you make this, I did it a 1/2 inch, is how straight up and down your sides are. If you wanted it to be more of a box, you want it to stand up a little taller, you would just simply bring your seam in a little bit more. But I wanted a nice open top basket so I can just toss things and not have to worry about my aim. So I have it just a 1/2 inch. You know, play with it, vary it. One of the fun things you can do is just move this to a basting stitch and do one, baste one up and see how you like it. And if you don't, adjust it before you get going. I made one that was a bigger one that held some school supplies, some office supplies. You can take and make an inch here instead of a 1/2 inch, and then a pen will fit right down in that one. It won't in the 1/2 inch one, but see, if it was an inch, you can fit a pin right in there. So depending on what the purpose of your basket is, you make that decision as you're going. Decide how you want it to look, how tall you want it to stand. If this isn't stiff enough with just one layer of batting, put in 2 layers of batting, make it stiffer. It has a little bit more body to it. I like mine to be a little bit flimsy, so I just use 1 layer of batting. You could use, there's a product called Soft and Stable that's more of a foam than a batting. You could use that. Whatever you choose is perfect. Oh, get it turned over. Get my last couple here. I'm almost done. I'll have to go back and cut all my threads. I'm using white thread because it's a white background in this fabric and white background in that fabric, so it all works really well. I'm on the last one. Look at that. I think we've been at it about a 1/2 hour, maybe a little bit more. But as you make a couple of them, you'll be able to do them pretty quickly. And we are done. And look at that. Look at that. Okay, the thing I did not do on this one, that I did do on this one, and I don't know why I didn't here, before you sew up these seams, stitch in the ditch down around a couple of these, and that's going to give it a little more stability on the side. Does it need it? Not necessarily, but it will give it some more stability. So do what you like. But how cute is that? Isn't that fun? So I hope you enjoy this project. I hope you make a whole bunch of them and give them away as gifts. Fill them up with chocolate. Make little ones and fill them up with chocolate and give them to your quilting friends. Whatever you like. I have one over by my chair that I keep my hand sewing stuff in. You can keep bobbins in it. That's always a fun thing. You know, whatever. And the really wonderful thing about them is if they get knocked off your table, you're going to spill your innards, but you're not going to break your bowl. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed and you just have a happy day quilting.